Hey, what is up, everybody? We are live today to discuss some breaking news in regards to the ongoing struggle to develop the next Star Trek movie. And I'm joined here with PJ. PJ, we got some new information that broke last night about the another attempt at a what would this be? 14th Star Trek film?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, the 14th. The 14th attempt at the 14th film.
Yes. Let's just run through the laundry list, shall we? Because it all started back in 2016, right before Beyond came out. They were already talking about a fourth Kelvin movie. They said that they had an idea for a story, and then uh, Beyond kind of underperformed. That didn't go into development. I think it was going to be the dudes who originally had the idea for like the third Star Trek. There was like another idea before Beyond, before like Simon Pegg came on to like
Robert
come up with the
Orsi wrote a
script.
script that they rejected
Yeah,
that they said was too cerebral.
it wasn't that, but there was some idea for like a fourth Kelvin movie. And anyways, that was gonna be the one that would bring back Chris
Oh,
Helmsworth.
yeah. It's the one where uh, Kirk would go back in time and meet his father, and they would both have an adventure together.
Well, that one almost went into production because they had a director that S.J. Clarkson. They were like getting ready to shoot, and then at the last minute, it's like, oh, we couldn't get money from the investors to pay Chris Pine and Chris Helmsworth, and they don't want to take a shitty get some percentage on the back end deal. So, the S.J. Clarkson movie did not happen, and then after that, I guess the Tarantino one was the one that was getting all the hype. Tarantino had hired the writer of The Revenant to script a movie.
Yeah, Tarantino, that writer, and J.J. Abrams were gonna had the idea floating around that Tarantino's 10th and final film could be a Star Trek film, and there was all kinds of rumors about what it would be about. Uh, I heard something about Yesterday's Enterprise, or later it came out that it was actually, I think it was confirmed. I'm not sure, but the idea was the Quentin Tarantino idea, and this was only revealed in the last year. I think that it was going to be based on the gangster episode of TOS,
A piece of the
a
action.
piece of the action.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the Iotians, I believe. Yeah, so that kind of made it make a little bit more sense if it was going to be like a Kelvin piece of the action. Be like, I could see why Tarantino maybe wanted to be involved in that, but of course, nothing has moved forward on that. And then I guess the last one that we heard a lot about was Noah Hawley, uh, about a over a year ago. Uh, they were talking about he was going to write and direct a Star Trek movie that would
and
have brought in some new characters.
they got fairly. They were in post production. They were in the process of casting. Um, what had happened was they were ready to go. They were going to shoot in Australia, and it was Emma Watts came in and didn't like the idea of an untested crew or an untested cast. I guess it would have been mostly unknowns, I assume, and it would have been an original idea, probably not involving, you know, Kirk or Spock or the TNG crew or anything like that, and that could have been the reason why she shut that down. But Emma Watts was actually the one who wanted this new guy. Uh,
Well, we should talk about Emma Watts a little bit because
yeah,
she's the boss right now. She's the new head of Paramount Pictures, right?
yeah,
Like the movie division of the huge corporation now, CBS Viacom. Their movie division is Paramount Pictures, and she is the head of that. So any Paramount movies are all going to be under her control.
she's the
And
Kevin Feige of Paramount. It,
uh,
well,
well, she wanted something that was like a little bit more of a, I guess, like predictable, like a guaranteed success, something that had like old characters or well-known actors or something like that. So that does kind of tell us something about like this movie, because they are saying the Hollywood trades are saying that they seem to think this is the one that's going to actually get made, and it's because of her. This is the one that she wants to happen.
Well, last we heard about a movie getting made, it was Kalinda Vasquez,
Yeah,
the
the
Discovery writer,
Discovery writer.
was gonna write an original Star Trek movie, and that, like, if knowing what Emma Watts thinks about original Star Trek movies, maybe that was shelved. We don't know what's happening with that. That could be a straight to streaming thing, maybe.
Yeah, well,
What,
there were some reports that the Kalinda Vasquez project was different than something else that they had on the not on the back burner, but something else that was in motion aimed at 2023. So I guess they might be potentially toying with the idea of like multiple Star Trek movies, which I think might be a good idea. I think you might be able to do that if you're making movies that are fairly different from one another and have like their own distinct personality. I don't think it would be like on the same scale as like the MCU where you do 3 or 4 movies a year and then do 3 or 4 sequels to each one of those movies. But I think there might be room for one Star Trek movie every year or two. But like you're saying, if Kalinda Vasquez was going to do an original idea, which is what everyone was saying, then that might not be what Emma Watts is wanting to do, or it might not be what she wants to do. Right out of the gate, her first Star Trek movie that she makes, she might want to like prove that they can do it. So, that's the I think the question that we're asking is this going to be another Kelvin movie?
It may be, if they want the familiar, they're gonna want Pine and Quinto back, and for 5 years now, they've all been saying, yeah, we will return if it happens, but none of them have had any idea about or any indication that they would ever return, because they've never revealed that there have been ideas in which they would be included, except for the Chris Pine reteaming with Chris Hemsworth thing. But Simon Pegg, over the years, has championed another Kelvin film, and the cast is always enthusiastic about it. So I thought if it was ever going to happen, it would be years and years from now, just as like I don't know, some weird thing that they would do. But they would need to make it. They would need a smaller budget, and I think the actor Chris Pine, who probably deserves a lot of money, he's a big star, but he's not that big, and he's not as big as I guess people thought he would be at this point in his career, because he's been around for about 15 years that I can recall, and I mean, I can see Chris Hemsworth demanding a bit of money, but it's weird. It's not to say that one actor is worth more than the other. I'm just saying in terms of which actor has been in the biggest grossing films, and Chris Hemsworth is obviously the one you'd have to pay more.
Well, I think the problem with Chris Pine is that he had a contractual obligation to get paid a certain amount if they made a 4th movie, and then they were having a hard time getting the backing from investors to cover that.
So do you think the Kelvin films were profitable? Like, do you think that in retrospect for the investors, they were good investments?
Yeah, I mean that first movie, 2009, made a bunch of money. That's the most profitable Star Trek film of all time, and ever since then, they've been trying to get back to that. I think the problem was with Star Trek Into Darkness.
Into Darkness is the most highest grossing one worldwide, isn't it?
I thought
700 million or something.
I thought Star Trek 09 made more.
Probably,
I mean, both of those made
more profit, because Into Darkness cost a bit more.
I think the part of the problem was they waited 4 years between Star Trek 09 and Star Trek Into Darkness, and a lot of the enthusiasm had died off. And then the movie was underwhelming to a lot of both like old school fans and also just like critics seemed to think it was decent, but they weren't as enthusiastic about it as the first movie. And I think general audiences just the first movie ends with it's like the ending of an origin story where you feel like, okay, now they can really do a cool series of adventures. We get to the end of Star Trek Into Darkness, and people are just like, oh, that was a little like clunky. I guess it was okay. And you know, when they waited 3 more years before doing Beyond, there was just zero enthusiasm.
Into Darkness made 467 million worldwide, and Beyond made. I just want to see the diminishing returns. 343 million on an $185 million budget. That's not great.
Yeah,
You know
so
what's
Beyond was the disappointment.
yeah.
But we should point out the reason why we're talking about this news now is because the reports are letting us know the creators involved with this are Matt Shakman, I believe is how you say his name. And he is really big right now. He's kind of a hot commodity because he just directed the six or no nine episode hit show WandaVision.
Yeah.
And not only do we have a director who's worked in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but the writers on this movie are named Lindsey Beer and Geneva Robertson-Dworet. I think is how you say her name. And that last one, Geneva, co-wrote 2019's Captain Marvel, and the two of them have done some other collaboration stuff as well. She seems to be kind of a up and comer in Hollywood because she's involved in a lot of projects that haven't come out yet. I'm looking at some of the information from TrekMovie.com, and they're saying that she's involved in like new entries into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Pet Cemetery franchises. I'm guessing this is mainly stuff like hasn't come out, but she's also done some work for the Paramount Hasbro cinematic universe they're trying to create with GI Joe and Transformers and all of that. She's currently working on the script for Mask. If anyone remembers like that old cartoon Mobile Armored Strike Command, she's done some work for Sony on the Silver Sable script that they're the spinoff of their Spider-Man movies, and she's also pinned an animated film for Warner Brothers likes these DC animated movies. They're doing Gotham City Sirens. That's like a Catwoman and Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
So she's done a lot of stuff. She's also done a lot of things, with very female centric stories, main characters that are women. So it makes me wonder if maybe they're doing that. If this is going to be, I don't know, if they want like established characters, there's not many options. It's going to be like a Uhura movie. I don't know if Emma Watts would see that as like a viable, path if that's what she's concerned about. If something that has like big branding, big name recognition. I don't know. What do you think about what these people are bringing to the table, especially like Matt Shakman?
Um, Competent director from what I've seen, and I've only really seen his work in WandaVision. Uh, the writers, I know nothing about them. The resume seems okay. I mean, it's hard to know if in a few months they'll be pushed aside, and it's like this other person and these other people are writing the new Star Trek movie that's coming out. Now, is this supposed to come out in 2023?
Yes. So they're going to need to if they want a movie by 2023, they're gonna have to get something going
Shooting
pretty
by the
quickly.
spring of 2022. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this seems to me like it's overtaking the Kalinda Vasquez film, right?
That's what the trade seemed like. People like Deadline and Hollywood Reporter and Variety, they're the ones that have their finger on the pulse, their ear to the ground, claim to know what's going on, and they're fairly reliable sources. They're under the assumption that this one's going to be moving at warp speed, is what I read.
What if it's a Kelvin film, but they actually do like some TNG stuff?
That's
You know,
something
like
that people
we have a new Picard, new Data, and
yeah.
all that stuff. Just the familiar like that's what they want to bank on.
I mean, that wouldn't be my preference, but I could see them totally wanting to do that. Uh, you know,
It's I wouldn't put it past them because I don't know. It seems like they're afraid to go to bold new places. You know what I mean? They want to they want to keep harping back on established uh, the old Trek, which is fine. You know, have your Easter eggs in your shows, and you have your old characters come back after years of being absent. But I want personally, if they announced the details of this film and they said it was about the next crew of the Enterprise, maybe during Picard's time or post Picard, but just another like a Star Trek movie about the crew of the Enterprise. Probably going to be another female captain who's probably nothing like Janeway or anybody else. Could be an alien female captain. Just there's nothing to do but speculate about what could this movie be. But I'm just saying the safe bet is like a Kelvin movie, if not with the Pine Crew, then like some weird TNG reboot where they don't have to follow the TNG canon because it's Kelvin, and they hinted to a TNG Kelvin universe in the third season of Discovery, so we know it exists. You know, it's out there in the ether.
I mean that is definitely an option, and that's something that I remember back, when Star Trek '09 had just come out. People back then were already thinking, what are they going to do like a trilogy of like these new TOS people, and then do a trilogy of like the new Next Generation people? Because
Yeah.
it's kind of an obvious idea. I don't think it's necessary, and again, it's not the story I would want to tell, but I agree with you. I can totally see people being like, okay, names like Picard, Riker, Troy, Crusher, Worf, Geordi, that's the name recognition. We need to get young, hot faces playing these established characters, do like our version of the 24th century, our version of the Enterprise D, and go for it.
Yeah.
I don't think that whatever this movie is, I don't think it's going to be connected to the TV stuff at all because Alex Hertzman's name hasn't been involved in any of this. It sounds like this is all what Emma Watts is wanting to do.
Well, she's in charge and she runs the show, and what she says goes. And it's unfortunate that she shot down Noah Hawley's movie. I would have liked to have seen what that would
Mm.
have been.
Robbie in the chat, Earl Grey Trekkie, he says, I know the Noah Hawley film won't happen and can see why a virus storyline wouldn't work, but I like the idea the most from what little we heard of it. Yeah, that's the main thing that we seem to have heard a lot of, is that it was going to be something with the Federation dealing with like a virus outbreak or something, which actually is a cool idea for a Star Trek movie. No one has done that in a Star Trek movie before. It's not just, oh, here's another bad guy out for revenge and we have to blow up his ship before he blows up our ship. It's something like a little different, a little bit more true to like Star Trek's ideals, a little bit more pacifistic, I guess, and scientific.
Well, they've had, like, especially in season 1 of TNG, there's like 4 or 5 virus episodes in that alone.
There's a lot in all of Star Trek. I know, like this last year and a half, they've really stood out to me. Like, I've rewatched the animated series. I've rewatched a lot of Deep Space Nine. I've rewatched a lot of the original series. I'm like, oh my god, there's so many viruses in Star Trek, so many illnesses and diseases.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see if, I mean, the closest thing that in movie form they've ever come is first contact with the Borg and the infecting of with the nanoprobes and stuff, but nothing really. It would be a callback to a classic episode almost to have a Star Trek movie about that, but sensitive times, I guess.
Uh, Earl Grey Trekkie's also asking, would you like it to be a Kelvin film?
I don't care as long as it's good. At this point, I just want to see. I want to go into a theater after years and years and years of not seeing a Star Trek movie in a theater, and I've gone to every one since Generations. I don't
Well,
care. I just want it to be good.
I would prefer it not to be a Kelvin movie because I feel like Star Trek Beyond is a good ending for the Kelvin people. And I hear
Yeah.
some people say like, "Oh, we need one more as like a good final send off." I'm like, I think Beyond was a good final send off.
You would also
I don't
have
know
the
if we're going to
dilemma
top
of the
that.
two Spocks. There would be two. There would be uh, Quinto continuing on in another film, whilst Peck is playing him on TV, and it would be like
Yeah,
it.
it's a little
It.
confusing.
You know, I mean, I've always wanted like Beyond was a perfect ending, and I've always wanted them to just kind of leave it alone and just focus on the timeline that I grew up in with, and but who
Yeah,
knows?
I would have a lot more fun watching this movie if it was something in the prime timeline, because then it's adding to that canon. It's adding to be like, okay, well that matters. That's going to have impact. That's going to have consequence. That'll change the way we think about that aspect, whatever it is. Forever and ever. If a Tholian shows up, they'll be like, okay, that adds like the Tholians. Or if like we see a Klingon disruptor do something, we're like, oh, we learned something new about the Klingon disruptor. If it happens in like a Kelvin timeline movie, it's like none of that matters. It's like, well, no, maybe this is a weird timeline, so who knows?
Yeah.
It's just it would it would add more to my experience if they kept it in the prime timeline, and if they were going to do it Kelvin, I would kind of prefer it to be with a different crew than the Kirk, Spock, McCoy Enterprise crew that we've already had 3 movies with.
I think
Thus,
it should be. I think it should be a logical sequel to Nemesis. Like 20 something years later, what's going on that? Not necessarily that particular Enterprise. It could be the end of that Enterprise's run, and they get a new one, or it could be a new one. Enterprise. What is it? Uh, F or J or what? F, right? It would be Enterprise F. Let's just say Enterprise F. If they announced like, yeah, it's about the new crew on the Enterprise F, and it's mostly all new people that I don't know, new characters that I don't know, I'd love it because there's always the possibility of war for Geordi or O'Brien or whoever else to show up in one of those
hmm,
movies.
that would be cool. That'd be cool if they did that. But I don't know. I'm sorry, my dog is being loud right now. He's excited because Antonia's home. Um, but he'll let me talk without interrupting me. Um, I'm just gonna mute myself. PJ, you can read the next comment from Earl Grey Trek.
Wouldn't that disrupt Picard? Well, they've played in the with having the movies and the TV shows that are within the same continuity on at the same time when Voyager and DS9 were on the air. The TNG movies were happening, and they didn't particularly cross over. Every time Worf appeared in the movies, they're like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "Oh."
Yeah, it was funny
Eventually,
the
they just never
evolution of
said.
that.
Yeah,
Like
eventually they just never mentioned it, right?
yeah, first contact they had like a really good explanation. He's on the Defiant. In Star Trek Insurrection, they didn't really try too hard. They're just like, Mr. Wolf, what the hell are you doing here? Then in Star
It
Trek
trails
Nemesis,
off. It trails off. You hear some kind of thing, and then it trails off, and you don't hear it. Yeah,
we get to Nemesis. They don't like DS9 ends with him going off to be a diplomat on Kronos. For some reason on Nemesis, he's back in uniform. Don't bring it up. Don't mention it. Whatever. There actually was like a deleted line that he decided the life of a diplomat wasn't for him. Just undoes his kind of the conclusion of his arc on DS9. But whatever. The the thing though back then, PJ, was that they put Rick Berman. Paramount gave Rick Berman control of the Star Trek movies in addition to the Star Trek TV show. So it was all still kind of in house under Rick Berman's purview. And I don't think we're getting that same situation here. I think that Emma Watts is going to do the movies that she wants to do, but she doesn't have anything to do with the TV side of things
no.
with CBS television. That's like a whole different thing. So I don't know if there's like an effort there to coordinate and synchronize or not. They could do really cool stuff independent from each other, but obviously there's more opportunities, I think, if you do try to work together. And yeah, I don't think they're going to be doing anything that's like going on TV right now. I don't think like Picard or TNG people, because I think Alex Kurtzman has that. They've given that to him. I don't think we're going to see that in this movie.
Yeah, that's. It seems like Kurtzman Trek and Watts Trek, I guess you could call it, are there's no legal firewall there. I guess there's no like if they wanted to collaborate and coordinate, it's totally cool now because Viacom CBS, they're no longer separate. But because at one point they were separate, that was why they created the Kelvin timeline. So the fact that the maybe I'm speculating a lot about what this person may or may not do, so just keep that in mind. She may want to stay in the line of the Kelvin movies in that respect. If she doesn't want to go to Christmas and say like, let's do something that involves characters from one of your shows or something like that, or you know, I even though I hate the idea of two Spocks, and I think Beyond was a perfect end, I wouldn't put it past them that they want to continue with a fourth Kelvin film. I think they think there's enough enthusiasm out there that it may be profitable.
Well, Starfleet Boy also points out having a dedicated producer makes a difference. Like Harv Bennett, and Harv Bennett was in charge of these Star Trek movies from Star Trek 2 to Star Trek 5, and then under his type of style, Nicholas Meyer and Leonard Nimoy did Star Trek 6, which, that era, Star Trek 5 is kind of the anomaly, but Star Trek 2 through Star Trek 6, that's kind of the best time period of Star Trek movies. It's like in the 80s, they were really making good Star Trek movies. And I think that's like a good thing to compare it to now, even though we don't have a dedicated Star Trek movie person. Emma Watts is not in the business of making Star Trek movies. She's in the business of making Paramount movies. So, she's also doing Mission Impossible, Transformers, all that other stuff. But when they were doing those Harv Bennett movies, things were split to where Harv Bennett had complete control of the 23rd century. He was making movies with Spock, Kirk, TOS style characters, and Gene Roddenberry and Rick Berman were on TV doing The Next Generation, and that was the division. It was two different time periods. We had the 2280s and the 2360s, and that's how things were kept separate at that time. So I think whatever we're getting now is going to be more like that and less like in the 90s when Berman was doing the movies and the shows.
Yeah. I want a DS9 film as well, Earl Grey, Trekkie. That's what I've always wanted after TNG. I thought that was the natural progression as a kid.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, obviously they're going to do a couple of TNG movies, and then they're going to introduce some DS9 characters, one of those, and then it's going to evolve into a movie. This how stupid naive I was. I literally thought there would eventually be a movie called Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And like, that's the film, and then it would be like the next one. Star Trek Voyager, like Voyager after they came home and shit. But those were foolish fantasies.
Well, there was kind of an idea on how to do that when Star Trek Nemesis was being written. John Logan, is that the name of the director? He also did, I think he did Training Day and Any Given Sunday and Gladiator. But anyways, he wrote Star Trek Nemesis, and he also had an idea for a sequel that would have been a team-up movie between the Enterprise, the Defiant, and the Voyager, basically, all together. Or Voyager, not the Voyager. But all those ships together, and it would involve people from all three of those shows.
Stuart Baird... No, wait. What's his name? Star Trek Nemesis.
Yes, Stuart Baird is the director.
Okay, and yeah, I would have liked to have seen something that honored the cast of the spin-offs of TNG or TOS.
And I've heard Garrett Wong say that. He said that Star Trek Nemesis should have been a Deep Space Nine and Voyager movie, and not a Next Generation movie. I mean, he's obviously like biased because he wanted to come back for a movie. But that was the sad thing about Deep Space Nine, though, is that when they finished season 7, they had like this huge, gorgeous Deep Space Nine set. That promenade where you could actually like walk into Quark's bar, and then you could go out of the bar and over to Odo's office, and everything was real. It was like they built all of that promenade, not all of it, but a huge area of it.
Yeah.
And then after they stopped shooting, there was some conversation about where will we ever use this in the movie? Probably not. So let's tear it down. And it breaks my heart now to think about that fantastic set being torn to pieces. I want them to
That
do a Deep Space Nine movie or show or something just so there's an excuse to rebuild it.
yeah.
I will go help. I will volunteer to like go help the
I mean,
construction team build it.
just imagine how good that set would have looked in widescreen. Like it really would have lent
Mm.
itself to, because it was a open area. It wasn't like constricted sets like like with the Enterprise D and generations where they had to add stuff onto the sides because it was widescreen and all that stuff. And they had to add like little things. You wouldn't have to add much to that set to make it a movie set. You know what I
And
mean?
it's self lit.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why, if you watch season one of Deep Space Nine, they hardly ever leave the station. And it's because like they blew their entire budget building that wonderful set. Now, in later seasons where they were able to do a bit more, they definitely get their money's worth out of it. But yeah, that was easily like the best looking principal set in all of Star. I would put it up there. I would say it still outshines like the Discovery set, and I really like the look of the Enterprise and Strange New Worlds, but I'll probably take DS9, my old Cardassian space station over Strange New
And
Worlds as Enterprise.
I know it's wishful thinking, but it's not completely off the table that they may revisit that space station and actually have an excuse to recreate it at some point, either for a movie or a TV show. I would love a sequel series to DS9. Not necessarily another season of that show, but like something set in that same place years later.
Mm-hmm. And they've been holding off on Deep Space Nine with the new Star Trek shows. We get references to Next Generation and Voyager pretty frequently. We have Picard and Seven of Nine and Riker and Troy have each have even have Data, a Hugh, like a lot of characters from TNG and a lot of characters from Voyager are showing up again in Picard and Lower Decks, but nothing really on DS9. We got to look at what might have been Deep Space Nine in what was the episode where Boimler was possessed by a bug? Cupid's errand
Cupid's errand
arrow. Yeah.
arrow, yeah.
We got like a 2 second look at the station in that episode, but it kind of does make me wonder. Alex Kurtzman did say a while ago. He said like, well, we have two other shows, two other ideas. We have like the Michelle Yeoh Section 31 show, which I don't know if that's ever gonna come out now, being that she's on another different TV show now. But he also said there's one other live action thing. And I really hope might just be being, fanboy. It's on my wish list, so I just want to wish it into being real. But I almost hope it's like a Deep Space Nine type show. Like I wouldn't want it to be like Deep Space Nine season 8. Like we might be on the same page with what you were saying. I would want it to be something like Star Trek: The Return to Deep Space Nine or something like that, where maybe you have like Nana Visitors is still there and Armin Shimmerman is still there, but there's like a bunch of like new people. Like you have like a General Kira who's like the boss of the station, and like Quark is still running his bar. But other than that, it's just like, new people, new cast, new problems.
Yeah,
That's what
that
I would
would.
want to do.
It's just so good, it would never happen. It's just too good. It's too good. It's too much of what the fans want. Feed
You
us.
know,
Feed us nostalgia berries.
that's an interesting thing with this, kind of modern regime of. So I always talk about like the different regimes, like the Roddenberry regime, the Harv Bennett regime, the Rick Berman regime. Now in like the Kurtzman regime, I think initially there was a lot of confusion about, well, what do the fans want? And then there's kind of like a Discovery season 1 backlash. So then season 2, you could see like they're trying to like cater to the fans, but they're not really. I think they don't always like know exactly what to do. And then we get to Picard, and I think Picard got a lot of things right. I know you feel it got a lot of things wrong, but some of the things in there were like they're using like the Discovery shuttles in the 24th century, and I know it's like a dumb nitpick, but still, it's like I get the impression like it doesn't occur to them that like that's stuff that like this fan base it doesn't like, and I think they're slowly starting to figure things out. I'm very excited about Doug Drexler old school Star Trek fan, worked in the Berman era. I'm very excited about him being on the art team in Discovery, because I give guys like him a lot of credit for why Star Trek was so good at, maintaining that visual continuity, uh, that all the real fanish stuff, like these little references to TOS that we got in like Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, that came from dudes like Doug Drexler and Michael and Denise Okuda, who were working on the shows and were like these huge fans. And I think we are kind of getting back to that, but it's kind of an awkward. The franchise is booming right now, more so than it's done in decades, but it is still kind of like this awkward transition of trying to figure out exactly what it wants to do going forward.
The visual style, or the visual adherence to canon that Lower Decks has displayed, has given, I think, everybody else a clue. Is like, wow,
Yeah.
people really appreciate it when you get things right, or as right as they could be, or as right as they would be in the general fan's mind of like what the Titan would look like in Lower Decks. And when you see it, you're like, okay, I've seen other iterations of that, and that makes sense to me. And now you know what that would look like in a live action series.
Mm.
And if they got that right, and you saw it at some point, you saw Riker back on the Titan again in Picard season 2, probably not going to happen. But if so, they have Lower Decks to go off of and say, you guys did it right. You guys know how to display the look of that era. And, Picard isn't that far away from TNG, So there would still exist a lot of the same aesthetics. So, yeah. I mean, I think Lower Decks was the saving grace. I mean, even people who don't like the other shows like that. Even people who don't like Star Trek. I know people who don't like Star Trek who watch that show.
That's what Sean told us, right? He said that he had like coworkers that really liked, like the adult comedies. They watched stuff like Adult Swim shows, and they got into Lower Decks because of that angle. Because like, oh, it's made by one of the Rick and Morty people. Okay, I'll give it a try.
And it is not like Rick and Morty like people thought it would probably be. Rick and Morty is much more like grotesque and insane.
But yeah, you can't do that type of like dark humor. Like Rick and Morty. I haven't watched a ton of it. I've seen the first season and a few other episodes. But and I like it. Just haven't had time to watch more. I don't watch that much TV. That's not Star Trek. But you can't do like that dark style of humor as brilliant as it is in Star Trek. That's one of the things that I like about Lower Decks. Like you were saying, it really does. It scratches an itch that the other shows weren't scratching. And part of that just comes from, there's kind of a pleasantness when as violent and harsh as like Discovery and Picard can be at times. There's something that's kind of enjoyable about a show where like people aren't going to have their eyes ripped out or
Well,
people aren't being killed left and right.
Rutherford does kind of get his eyepiece ripped out, but they
Well,
gotta put it in there
true.
somewhere. They gotta put something in there somewhere.
But it's like
But yeah, it's lighter.
no one dies until the last episode of the season. And when that happened, it had impact. Like,
yeah, it's good.
you remember talking about that when we were just like, man, like I really felt like the gut punch of that when the Packleds were so, you take like this joke as like a serious threat. It was really wonderful the way all of that stuff played out, and it just not just that, but what you mentioned with like the visuals, it was scratching an itch that these other shows weren't. So to tie it back into our main topic, let me ask you this, because this kind of concerns me now. We're seemingly getting the Star Trek TV shows kind of more back on track with what fans want. I believe like Kurtzman is trying to like cater to fans, but also tell like his new and different stories, and they're trying to figure out how to do that. They're getting better at it. I see that. But now if we have like a new group of people making movies, are they going to need to be like re-educated? Are we going to get like a really weird new movie, and then the next one gets like a little bit more in line with fan expectations, or what is that evolution going to be like?
I think at this point in the history of the internet, they should know now like what to do. I mean, it's really crazy how people get paid so much, and then like J.J. Abrams, he's a good businessman. He's made his money. I got respect for that. But at the same time, he really didn't know what he was doing with '09, and he pulled it off. I liked it when it first came out. I still kind of like the movie as its own thing. Not so much Into Darkness. I think that's the worst movie he's ever made. But it's like these people, they're just gonna go with another fourth Kelvin movie, and they're gonna stick with that bad robot formula because even if people will argue if the movies weren't as profitable as they say, like they did make a lot, but they did cost a lot. Maybe I don't see, but that's another thing. I don't know how they're going to get investors. They couldn't get investors for the next Kelvin movie back in the day. What has changed that it could be something that people would want to invest in now? Like I said, if they want to get people to invest in the movie, I think they're going to have to display some kind of like familiar territory. Like, we're bringing back, we're doing a remake of DS9 or something. I don't know. I didn't even know what the question was. I just trailed off. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just talking about like, are the people doing these movies, are they going to be able
Well,
to
they
make
had to
something
be, yeah.
that fans are going to be happy with?
They should know. They should have the basic understanding of what they're doing. I mean, if you're going to write a Star Trek movie, maybe necessarily you don't need to read every book and see every single episode, but you got to do a degree of studying. Like if you're going to do a Kelvin TNG movie, it's okay if you ignore TOS and the other ones and just focus on TNG and watch every single episode and get a feel for just those characters and write it that way. But at the same time, you just have to... There should be a creative freedom that the writer should have where somebody, I'm not necessarily coming in and raining on their parade, but says, yeah, great idea, but this particular technical thing is not this but that. You know what I mean? Just fixing just little like technical terms. Like they call it, maybe the writer says star drive instead of warp drive or some stupid little thing like that, right?
Yeah, that's supposed to be Dayton Ward's job, right? Well, on the TV shows, the movie people might be like, Dayton who? We haven't even heard of him.
Wasn't David Mack involved in one of those new shows?
Yes, he's been involved on Prodigy and I think Lower Decks also.
Yes, Prodigy, yes. See, there you go. David Mack. In David Mack, I trust.
Yeah, I know you're a fan of his novels, and I've read one of his novels and I liked it. But
I've only read 4, the Destiny trilogy and the Discovery one.
yeah, I read the Discovery one. What you were saying about like having to get like a feel of the franchise, though, I think a good example of that is if we look at Nicholas Meyer. Most people consider Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan the greatest Star Trek movie ever made. He directed that when he was very young and was very unfamiliar with Star Trek, but he did sit down and watch it, and he reworked the script for that movie. And he didn't talk to Gene Roddenberry, but he figured out, he's like, oh, this is kind of like Horatio Hornblower in Outer Space, which was one of Roddenberry's inspirations for Captain Kirk and the Enterprise. He figured out that dynamic between Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. Remember that scene in Star Trek II when they're displaying the Genesis device? They're watching that simulation of it, creating life on an inorganic moon. And that argument we get between like Spock and McCoy and Kirk trying to referee between like these two opposing views. It's very quintessential original series, and this guy who was not a fan of that show but just came into it as a newcomer was able to like watch it, get a feel for that, figure that stuff out, and write a scene like that. Yeah, we need creators to take that approach. I agree. Like you can hire people that aren't fans, but they do need to do their homework to an extent.
Yeah, it's just like anything. If someone you're commissioned to write a script for, let's just for argument's sake, Stargate, like they're gonna do another Stargate show or movie. I personally have not watched. I've only seen the movie and one episode of the TV show out of all of them. And I was asked, the first thing I would do is I would rewatch the movie and then I would watch every single episode as if I, given I wasn't an extremely busy person and I had the time, but I would make an effort to know what the original show was about. Like they hired me based on the fact that I could write good stories and blah blah blah, which is what what Kevin Feige does with directors and writers in the Marvel movies. It's not necessarily about how much you know the comic. It's about how good a storyteller are you, and then
Hmm.
just having faith in certain people and knowing that if they're going to take on a particular franchise, they will do enough research. Like I said, like they don't need to go down the rabbit hole too deep, but they need to know enough based on what they're writing about and what characters they're writing for.
That's a great
Like you
example.
said, the Nicholas Meyer thing is a great example of that. Like what you just said.
In the
Like he,
MCU, they do that all the time. Like, I don't think Taika Waititi grew up reading a bunch of Thor comics, but he had a vision for that movie, and he also was influenced by a lot of the source material. You know, if you watch like the commentary, he talks about like, you know, like Jack Kirby comics and stuff. Like, I was like, oh yeah, like this guy like did some homework on this before he made the movie. Of course, like he got the job because he is, you know, like you were saying, he is like a great storyteller. He's a fantastic director. He's a guy like any movie he's involved with now, I'm curious about. So, but yeah, like he put in that extra effort. It's also weird in like the kind of the post rise of Skywalker world where I feel, you know, if we look at like what the other Star franchise did, it really felt like, I don't know about you, but like when I was watching that movie, it felt like they were going down a laundry list of fan complaints that were on the internet and trying to address all of them. You know, Rose Tico is barely in the movie. Get an explanation for Ray. We get an explanation for the Holdo maneuver that I don't think anyone like seriously asked for. It like for me, like I could not connect to that movie for a few reasons, but one because yeah, it felt so artificial in that way.
it it felt like an amusement park ride that you didn't think of the second it was over. Like it was okay. It was fun to look at, and this was fun and whatever. Like I had a good time watching it, but like looking back now, like the much hated Last Jedi is probably the best of the bunch because it was more thoughtful and actually took risks with the characters that could have really gone somewhere interesting, and they had this fear of the few stupid people who said, "Oh, Rose Tico" or whatever. They did something like that in Star Trek uh, Discovery season 2 with the
Yeah,
holograms. Some people complained about the holograms. It's like, yeah, but like you don't have to make a whole excuse of, oh, the Enterprise broke down because of those damn holograms. That was the only explanation you got for why the Enterprise broke down. Something to do with the holograms. Therefore, we will not use them from now on. It seemed like such a direct, something that was directly addressing you as a fan. Like, you complained about this, now we're fixing it. See, and it's
yeah.
like, no,
Let me let me
I
pat
didn't care
myself
that
on the
much.
back for fixing it for you.
Yeah,
You see, I fixed it for you. They did that with in the same season with Michael Burnham with Spock and Amanda and Sarek all like taking an oath of secrecy. It's like I didn't need them to do that. Like I know people were like, how come we never heard of Spock's sister? It's like, yeah, like how come we've never heard like Chekhov's cousin or
and the whole thing about Sarek not being able to interact with Spock didn't make sense because they meet again sometime between then. Because I remember watching Journey to Babel again. He said it's been 7 years or 5. It's not been long enough. Like it was
oh,
like literally 22:58 or 59 that they last spoke. I think,
I
which was
thought it was
after the
13
events of season
years.
2.
Okay, I might be wrong then. But there's also a cheat with that because I know that the way that they phrase it is we have not spoken to each other as father and son in
Oh
so many
yeah,
years. So they could, if Strange New
semantics.
Worlds wanted to put them in the same room, they could do it. They just can't speak to each other as father and son. Interpret that as you will.
It's like he had a parental divorce. It's like legally we are not father and son right now. Yeah, but yeah.
but but yeah, so it is weird, you know, the way that the shows and we don't know what the movies are going to do, but the way that they try to manage fan expectations and try to you know satisfy fans, but yeah, it's like they, you know, what would have been more satisfying than like that explanation for the holograms would be not having Discovery shuttles in Picard season 2, like that shuttle that John Eves designed that we see on Mars. Just copy and paste that one, and that would have done more to please the fan base than having Pike explain that they're removing the holograms off of the Enterprise.
Actually, there was it was one of the novels. I've read the first three Discovery novels, and one of them I might have been the Saru one. I'm not sure. No, I think it was David Mack one, where they talk about how holograms can encode a certain information, secret information or something, and it can be used in a nefarious way. And I remember thinking, oh, that could be a good excuse to use in the show of why they shouldn't use them, because you could hide a lot of information. They use up a lot of information and all this stuff, but whatever, who cares?
I have an idea for how to explain that in Strange New Worlds. It'd be really easy. And they can't show like Romulans on screen, or they can't have the Starfleet people see them. Rather, if
All
they
the
want to do
Vulcans are
anything with the
secret.
Romulans,
All the Vulcans are secret. Like, we know what they look like. We're never gonna tell.
well, they could do a story where Romulans. It turns out Romulans are able to like spy on you like through holograms, and they've been spying on like the whole Federation. And so they're
Mm.
like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna have to like abandon this holographic communications technology until we can make it more secure." That'd be kind of exciting too if you have like someone like running through the ship trying to like disable all the holograms and stuff because they're like, oh, like the Romulans are spying on us, and maybe like speak a little bit to like our modern day like surveillance state where like everyone has like a Alexa or Google Home or whatever like in their house spying on them. Our cell phones are spying on us right now. I don't know. That's just my idea. Just
Yeah.
throwing it out there. Yeah, but PJ, I do want to, I guess, kind of wrap things up by mentioning. I know you were also a big fan of WandaVision. I think we both really enjoyed that show. I remember talking to you about it. With Matt Shakman directing the Star Trek movie, um, I'm pretty excited about that because I felt like he showed a lot of range just in those 6 episodes. He kind of had to shoot a bunch of different types of stuff. We had like the big CGI action. We had like the quieter but like emotional moments. We had like the really surreal and weird stuff. It's kind of part of the show. Is that, like every episode's like kind of like a different genre almost. Is there anything that you find particularly exciting about him being the one in charge of this movie that we know nothing about?
There's nothing wrong with talent behind the camera. Hiring competent writers and directors is always a good thing. But this whole there's a Star Trek movie coming has been going on for 5 years, and it seems like every single year there's the promise of a new movie that never comes. And now there's 2 times now we've been promised a 2023 movie. One by Glinda Vasquez, which we don't know if that's separate or if this new one overtakes it. I don't, like I said before, I don't know if a few months from now or a year from now, fans are gonna be like, "Yeah, what's going on with that new Star Trek movie?" It's like, well, now Steven Spielberg is having a crack at it, and it's like, okay,
Wow.
cool, and that's another thing we'll get excited about, and then but maybe I'm willing. If I had to put money on it, I had to put $5 on it. I think this may be the one that could actually get made. Whether it's good or not or successful, who knows? And what it's about. I think when they start giving us, if they start giving us details about like what it's actually about and the plot, and it gets to like the point that Noah Hawley's film got to, where they're about to cast and they have shooting locations and whatnot. Because I think Australia was going to be like part of, like obviously the Earth scenes probably or something for the Noah Hawley movie. So if we start hearing them that they're shooting and we start hearing casting announcements, that's when I'll actually start really getting excited and having actual confidence that we're going to see another Trek movie, because it's been too long. This is one of the biggest gaps in between Trek movies in a long time.
Yeah, it'll be tied with the largest was between
Nemesis.
Nemesis in '09. That was a 7 year gap, right? 2002 to 2009.
Yep.
So this will be from 2016 until 2023. So yeah, it'd be tied a 7 year gap. It technically be like a couple of months longer because I think Nemesis came out in November and '09 came out in May.
But I guarantee you, if this new 2023 movie gets made and it does well, they need to get on the sequel like quicker, because you can't have no like 3 or 4 year absence between these movies, which it's not good. If you want momentum
That was
for
the
your
mistake of
franchise,
JJ.
yeah,
Yeah, that's where JJ goofed. And I get it, he wanted to go make his Super 8 movie and then come back and play with Star Trek again or whatever. But now this is where it might be handy to have Kalinda Vasquez working on something different because, okay, we get the Shakman Trek in 2023. It does pretty good. And yeah, he's going to go do his sequel. In the meantime, we can, push the Kalinda Vasquez thing out and strike while the iron's hot, and also test the waters for expanded universe potential and doing multiple film series. That's the thing that Hollywood seems to really want. Ever since the Marvel Cinematic Universe took off and became the most profitable film franchise of human history,
yeah.
everyone's been trying. Warner Brothers tried it with their DC movies that didn't really work out. The Universal monster universe, they speaking of Alex Kurtzman, they've tried that several times. They did like that Dracula origin movie and the Mummy movie, and what else? There's a few they tried.
And you know what? Me and Sean have talked about the Mummy and how it's not as bad as people say. Like, it's like some of the stuff with Russell Crowe and some of the stunts and visuals in that movie are pretty neat, but it just wasn't good enough to kickstart a franchise. And they put a lot of faith in Alex Kurtzman in directing that movie, and he did an okay job. People want to lambast him for that. That's one thing I give him a little bit credit for. Like, I think it was his first film. It could have been one of his first or second film or something. I don't think he really directed movies. He's just been producing and writing.
In writing, yeah, he's primarily a writer.
But yeah, you want. I don't know. I have to look this up. I don't know if there's a dude, or dude, could be man or woman, a person that they want to, or they're planning to appoint to coordinate. Because I personally thought the Kalinda Vasquez thing was going to be like, we're going to get a theatrical Discovery movie or something that followed tradition of the 90s thing or the 80s thing, where you had the show that went into the movie. And they did that a lot in the 90s. You had like X-Files go into a movie, then go back to the TV show, like type of thing. I thought that could be a possibility. But now I think all that's separate still, even though the rights are all together. Like, there won't be any crossover in that regard. Maybe it's too complicated like that. Like, they're not at that Marvel stage where they can literally have a movie lead into a TV show, and a TV show lead into a movie. Like, that's never really been done effectively before.
Yeah, yeah, that's the goal that all the Hollywood studios are trying to accomplish. They're all trying to create like their own version of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I guess Disney has done it twice because they have Marvel and they have Star Wars,
Yeah.
but no one else has really cracked the code. Paramount's also doing this Transformers, GI Joe, whatever Hasbro
Universe,
cinematic
yeah.
universe. That's just, it seems a little forced, but yeah, that's what everyone is wanting to do because when you have something like the MCU, we can make all these different movies, and that's like guaranteed income. They like having like that predictability. Like, okay, we're gonna do this movie, and because it's the same brand as this movie and the same brand as that movie, and this is a proven brand, they're all gonna be able to make a guaranteed profit. And yeah, that's the driving force right now. So love it or hate it, that
I
is
just
the
don't want it to be
reality.
watered down. I want it to be intellectual and not just like wham bam, don't think about anything. I want a Star Trek movie that I think about like afterwards, as opposed to them were some good explosions and that's it.
Yeah, and I feel like Noah Halley was our best shot at getting that, but I guess we will see what Matt Shakman does, or we won't, or this one will just never go into production either. But yeah, but I mean, the like you were saying, like I was
Oh,
saying,
breaking news: Quentin Tarantino is back on the new. Mac Shackman has been ousted. No, joking, kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah, who knows? I think this will stick. Let's just hope that this will stick, so we can just see another Star Trek movie. God damn it!
Yeah. I want to see a movie. I want to cover it. We started Tex-Trek right after Beyond came out, so we've never covered the production of a movie, the
Yeah,
the promotional material. You're like, oh, here comes the next trailer, and then, oh, we're gonna go see the movie, and then catch our reaction to the movie. And yeah, it'll be a fun experience just for that, and just to talk to you and other fans I know, and just have that ride of the movie together.
and it will be a joy for a lot of people who talk about this stuff to speculate and to follow the news and report on it and stuff, because a lot of YouTubers have never been around long enough to cover a Star Trek movie, like you said, and it's it's gonna be crazy to do, like, eventually at some point in the future, a review or discussion about a Star Trek theatrical film. It'll seem like it's been ages.
Well, we'll get there eventually. Hopefully by
Oh,
2023.
or 2033 or whatever.
But I think that's all we have to mention. But if anyone wants to get more of PJ's insight, you should subscribe to the Boat Wreck channel. You have anything going on there you want to promote?
Well, the most recently, I did a live about all the stuff that's going on, but not this particular topic yet. But I'm waiting for San Diego Comic-Con before I actually talk about anything or have any more discussions, because I'm hoping to see some live-action trailers. I know we're going to see Prodigy and Lower Decks, but there's been no announcement for any kind of live-action panel, has there?
No, and from what I was told, I asked Larry Nemechek this the other day, and he said that he doesn't think they're doing it because all the panels
Oh.
should be announced by now.
So I guess Star Trek Las Vegas will have to wait for that. But
Well,
in
I
the
don't think it's going to be there either
uh,
that's not like an official licensed CBS event anymore. Creation is kind of like parted ways with them. So I think they're saving that for Star Trek Day in September. I think that's when we're going to get like the Strange New Worlds, and they might just randomly drop the trailer, like the Picard season 2 trailer just kind of randomly came out on its own. So it might be something
oh,
like that.
well, we're less than a month away from new episodes of Trek with Lower Decks, and
Yeah,
that's something that I really enjoyed covering last season, so I'll be doing that again.
cool. And everyone should come back to Tex-Trek on Friday, and we are premiering our latest podcast episode. I had the pleasure of speaking with Star Trek writers Jack Trevino and Tony Marbury. They have the story by credits on the Deep Space Nine episodes in Discretion. That's where they introduce Torres Zial. And Little Green Men. That's where Quark, Nom, and Rog go back in time to Roswell, New Mexico. Two fantastic episodes, but these writers had a lot of insight into other episodes they pitched. We talked to them about ideas they had for Next Generation and Voyager, and talked to them about some of the fan films they were involved in. And what was really cool was getting to talk to them about like that process when they had the open submissions where like anyone could write a script for Star Trek, and all the steps they had to go through to like get their scripts into the Star Trek writers room and get those scripts sold and get those stories made. It was really fascinating getting to talk to the two of them. And they're right down the road for me in San Antonio. I'm in Austin. They're right down the road in San Antonio, Texas. So really, really cool. Jack Trevino and Tony Marbury. You can catch that Friday. And until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.